Imagine wielding a sword, your life dedicated to a code of honor, so strict it defines your very existence. The samurai, Japan's legendary warriors, have captured the world's imagination for centuries. But what if their strength, discipline, and endurance weren't just a result of training or culture? What if their DNA held the key to their warrior spirit? Recent breakthroughs in genetics have revealed astonishing insights into the origins of the samurai. Far from being a purely isolated lineage, their ancestry weaves through millennia of migration, conflict, and evolution. Scientists have uncovered genetic links to ancient hunter-gatherer tribes, connections to mainland Asia, and even traces of unexpected genetic adaptations that may have shaped the physical and mental fortitude of these iconic fighters. But what does it all mean? Could DNA explain the samurai's unparalleled resilience in battle? Is there truly a warrior gene that set them apart from ordinary people? And what about their descendants? Do traces of the samurai legacy still flow through the veins of modern Japanese families? In this video, we're diving deep into the hidden genetic history of the samurai. We'll explore their ancient roots, how historical invasions left genetic fingerprints on their lineage, and even whether their DNA influenced their legendary strength and longevity. By the end, you'll see the samurai not just as historical figures, but as living, breathing links to Japan's ancient past, a past now written in their genes. So grab your armor, ready your katana, and join us on this journey to uncover forgotten genetic origins of Japan's most enigmatic warriors. Because their story isn't just carved into history, it's etched into their very DNA. The genetic story of the samurai begins thousands of years before the warrior class even existed. To understand their origins, we must look at the two ancient populations that shaped Japan's genetic landscape, the Jomon and the Yayoi. The Jomon people were Japan's earliest inhabitants, arriving on the islands over 14,000 years ago. They were hunter-gatherers, living off the land and sea, crafting intricate pottery long before many other civilizations even discovered agriculture. Genetic studies show that the Jomon carried unique East Asian haplogroups, which influence physical traits like robust bone structure and increased endurance. It's possible that these traits were passed down through generations, eventually contributing to the physical resilience of future samurai warriors. But the genetic story doesn't end there. Around 3,000 years ago, a new wave of migrants arrived from mainland Asia, the Yayoi people. These migrants brought advanced agricultural practices, metalworking, and a more hierarchical social structure. The Yayoi had genetic ties to ancient populations in Korea and China, and their DNA introduced new adaptations related to immune function, metabolism, and even cognitive abilities. The mixing of Jomon and Yayoi populations created the genetic foundation of the Japanese people, including the ancestors of the samurai. Scientists estimate that modern Japanese DNA is a roughly 90 to 10% split between Yayoi and Jomon ancestry, but in some isolated regions, including areas historically linked to samurai strongholds, the Jomon component is higher. This genetic blending may have given the samurai an edge. The physical endurance of the Jomon, combined with the strategic intelligence and adaptability of the Yayoi, could have created the perfect genetic recipe for a warrior class. And as we'll see, these ancient genetic roots would only grow more complex as Japan entered its feudal era. As Japan's feudal era unfolded, the genetic legacy of the Jomon and Yayoi populations evolved alongside the emergence of a warrior class. The samurai weren't just born out of societal shifts. They were forged by centuries of regional adaptation and selective survival in battle. Scientists have discovered subtle genetic variations in populations from areas historically associated with powerful samurai clans, revealing fascinating connections between DNA and the traits that define these legendary warriors. For instance, samurai families from regions like Kyushu and Tohoku exhibit genetic markers linked to heightened physical endurance and faster muscle recovery. These traits would have been invaluable in the brutal, drawn-out battles of feudal Japan, where warriors had to fight for hours or even days in heavy armor. The prevalence of genes related to bone density and strength in these regions also hints at a genetic advantage that may have helped samurai endure the intense physical demands of their training and combat. But it wasn't just physical toughness that shaped the samurai. Genetic studies show that certain alleles linked to emotional regulation and heightened focus are more common in Japanese populations than in many other East Asian groups. These genetic factors may have influenced the samurai's legendary discipline, helping them master the art of Zen Buddhism, which emphasized mental clarity, detachment, and unwavering composure even in the face of death. Interestingly, genetic diversity between samurai clans may have also influenced their distinct martial traditions. Clans from different regions carried subtle variations in immune system genes, which would have impacted their susceptibility to disease and their overall longevity. A warrior who survived multiple battles not only passed down his sword, but his DNA. And over generations, the samurai may have become genetically fine-tuned for survival. This intersection of genetics and environment laid the foundation for a class of warriors unlike any the world had ever seen. And as the samurai rose to power, their genetic legacy continued to evolve in surprising ways, even influencing their appearance, armor design, and approach to warfare itself. What made the samurai so physically formidable? It turns out that the answer might be hidden in their DNA. Scientists analyzing genetic data from modern Japanese populations, especially those with ancestral ties to regions known for samurai clans, have uncovered genetic markers associated with physical endurance, muscle performance, and even pain tolerance. These findings suggest that the legendary stamina and resilience of the samurai weren't just a result of rigorous training, but were potentially influenced by inherited traits shaped over centuries of survival and warfare. One fascinating discovery involves genes related to fast-twitch muscle fibers, which are responsible for explosive strength and quick reflexes. These fibers would have been crucial in combat, where split-second movements could mean the difference between life and death. Samurai swordsmanship or kenjutsu required precise, lightning-fast strikes, and the presence of these genetic markers could have given warriors a biological edge. Additionally, genetic adaptations tied to cardiovascular efficiency have been found in Japanese populations. These adaptations enhance oxygen utilization and stamina, which would have been invaluable during long battles or intense training sessions. The ability to sustain physical output for extended periods may explain how samurai endured grueling military campaigns, fought in mountainous terrain, and engaged in prolonged hand-to-hand combat without collapsing from exhaustion. But resilience wasn't just physical, it was mental, too. Studies show that certain gene variants related to dopamine and serotonin regulation are more prevalent in Japanese populations. These neurotransmitters influence mood, stress response, and emotional stability. For a samurai, staying calm and focused in the chaos of battle wasn't optional. It was a necessity. Genetic predisposition to emotional control could have reinforced a samurai's ability to maintain composure, channel fear into resolve, and fight with unwavering discipline. Even their remarkable capacity to withstand pain might have had genetic roots. Scientists have identified gene variants linked to pain perception, suggesting that some samurai might have genuinely felt less pain or recovered more quickly from injuries. Coupled with the intense conditioning of their bodies through martial arts practice and ascetic rituals, this genetic advantage could have made them seem almost superhuman on the battlefield. These genetic factors, honed by natural selection and the brutal realities of warfare, helped shape the samurai into some of the most formidable warriors in history. But as we'll see in the next section, their DNA didn't just influence their bodies. It might have played a role in shaping their mind, philosophy, and the enduring code of Bushido that defined their way of life. The strength of the samurai wasn't just in their bodies. It was in their minds. The unwavering discipline, iron will, and profound sense of duty that defined the samurai ethos weren't just products of culture and training. Emerging research suggests that genetics may have played a role in shaping the mental traits that made samurai so psychologically resilient and committed to their code of honor, Bushido. One key area of interest lies in the genetic markers associated with impulse control and long-term planning. Certain gene variants that regulate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for decision-making and self-discipline, appear more common in populations with deep historical ties to structured, hierarchical societies like feudal Japan. This genetic influence might have made it easier for samurai to embrace the strict mental conditioning required to master martial arts, endure hardship, and stay loyal to their lords, even in the face of death. Another fascinating genetic component involves the serotonin transporter gene, 5-HTDLPR, which influences emotional regulation. Variants of this gene linked to emotional stability and reduced reactivity to negative stimuli are more prevalent in East Asian populations. For samurai, who were trained to face death with serenity and view life as fleeting, this genetic predisposition to emotional balance could have been a crucial asset. It may have helped them suppress fear, endure loss, and maintain a composure in the most extreme circumstances. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, may have also played a role in reinforcing the samurai's intense loyalty to their clans and comrades. Genetic variants that promote higher oxytocin release can strengthen social bonds and increase empathy toward in-group members. This biological mechanism could have intensified the samurai's devotion to their lords, their fellow warriors, and the rigid social structure that governed their lives. Even the samurai's willingness to sacrifice themselves for honor might have genetic underpinnings. Studies show that certain genetic markers associated with heightened risk tolerance and reduced fear responses are more prevalent in populations with long histories of warfare. These genes may have influenced the samurai's ability to charge into battle with little regard for their own safety or to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, to preserve their honor. Ultimately, these genetic factors likely worked hand in hand with cultural traditions, shaping the unique psychology of the samurai. Their minds were forged not only through years of disciplined training and philosophical study, but also by inherited traits that gave them an innate capacity for focus, resilience, and self-sacrifice. But the samurai weren't isolated warriors. They were part of a vast historical and genetic tapestry that stretched across ancient Japan. In the next section, we'll explore how the DNA of the samurai links them to other ancient Japanese lineages and what their genetic legacy reveals about the broader history of the Japanese people. The samurai weren't just warriors. They were living vessels of Japan's ancient past. Their DNA connects them to millennia-old lineages that stretch back to the earliest inhabitants of the Japanese archipelago. Recent genetic research is uncovering the profound roots of the samurai, linking their ancestry to the two main ancestral groups of Japan, the Jomon and the Yayoi people. The Jomon, Japan's earliest known inhabitants, arrived over 14,000 years ago. They were hunter-gatherers with distinctive physical features, including robust builds and unique facial structures. Genetic studies show that modern Japanese people still carry Jomon DNA, and it's likely that many samurai, especially those from more rural or mountainous regions, inherited these ancient genes. Some researchers even speculate that the Jomon contribution to the samurai gene pool may have influenced their physical endurance and distinct appearance. The Yayoi people, who migrated from mainland Asia around 3,000 years ago, brought advanced farming techniques, metalworking, and a hierarchical social structure. They also introduced new genetic traits, including those associated with taller stature and different immune system adaptations. The Yayoi's influence on Japanese genetics is especially strong in areas that later became power centers for samurai clans, suggesting that the samurai may have been direct descendants of these early agricultural pioneers. What's even more intriguing is how genetic testing of ancient remains from samurai burial sites shows a blend of Jomon and Yayoi ancestry, reinforcing the idea that the samurai were a genetic bridge between Japan's two foundational populations. This genetic blending may have contributed to a unique mix of physical toughness and strategic intelligence that defined the samurai warrior class. Interestingly, traces of genetic markers associated with Northern Asian nomadic groups, like the Mongols and Tungusic peoples, have also been found in samurai DNA. This suggests that Japan's early interactions with mainland Asia may have left a subtle genetic imprint on the warriors, potentially contributing to traits linked to heightened aggression and adaptability, both crucial for survival in Japan's brutal feudal conflicts. Beyond just their genetic origins, the samurai's DNA tells a story of lineage and legacy. Some modern Japanese families can trace their genetic lineage back to prominent samurai clans, preserving ancient bloodlines that once shaped the nation's destiny. For those descended from samurai, genetic testing offers not only a window into personal ancestry, but a living connection to Japan's warrior past. The samurai may have laid down their sword centuries ago, but their genetic legacy still pulses through the veins of modern Japan. Genetic studies have uncovered fascinating links between contemporary Japanese people and the warrior class that once ruled the land, showing how the traits that define the samurai have endured through generations. One of the most striking findings is the persistence of certain Y-DNA haplogroups, genetic markers passed down through the male line. Samurai clans were often fiercely patriarchal, with leadership and warrior status inherited through bloodlines. Haplogroups like O3 and D1b, which are more prevalent in regions historically dominated by samurai families, suggest that the genetic signature of these warriors has survived, especially in areas like Kyushu and the Kano region. What's even more fascinating is how genetic traits associated with physical resilience, mental fortitude, and heightened immune responses appear to be more common in Japanese populations with strong ties to former samurai territories. Scientists speculate that centuries of selective pressures, constant warfare, strict martial training, and a life governed by Bushido may have reinforced certain advantageous traits within samurai bloodlines, which were then passed down through tightly controlled family structures. For example, genes linked to muscle endurance, faster wound healing, and even increased stress tolerance are slightly more prevalent in Japan than in some neighboring East Asian populations. While not exclusive to samurai descendants, these traits might have been more concentrated in warrior families, where survival often depended on both physical prowess and psychological resilience. But the samurai legacy isn't just physical, it's cultural, too. Genetic research shows that certain behavioral traits, like heightened sensitivity to social hierarchies and an increased propensity for risk assessment, may have roots in evolutionary adaptations. These traits would have been invaluable for samurai, who lived and died by their ability to navigate complex feudal politics and battlefield strategy. Modern Japanese families who trace their lineage to samurai clans sometimes carry rare genetic variants that link them to specific historical figures. DNA testing has even been used to identify living descendants of famous samurai warlords, providing a direct genetic connection to the legends of the past. For these descendants, carrying samurai DNA is more than just a scientific curiosity. It's a profound link to their ancestors' courage, discipline, and sacrifice. In a sense, the samurai never truly disappeared. Their bloodlines live on, scattered throughout Japan, quietly shaping the health, strength, and character of modern generations. The DNA that once built an entire warrior class still flows through the people of Japan, preserving a biological memory of an era defined by honor and steel. Genetics has become a time machine, a way to look back into history and rediscover lost chapters of human existence. For Japan, DNA research is not just about science. It's a powerful tool for reclaiming the legacy of the samurai. As scientists unravel the genetic code of the past, more people are discovering unexpected connections to these ancient warriors, reshaping their understanding of identity and cultural belonging. One of the most remarkable impacts of genetic research is the ability to trace lineages back to specific regions and clans. In Japan, many families have long-standing oral traditions claiming descent from samurai, but without written records, these claims are often impossible to verify. Today, advanced DNA testing can match individuals to genetic markers common in historical samurai populations, validating family stories passed down through generations. For instance, descendants of the powerful Tokugawa and Minamoto clans have been identified through distinctive Y-DNA haplogroups that point directly to historical warrior bloodlines. This genetic connection can be profoundly meaningful, especially in a culture where ancestry and family honor are deeply valued. For some, discovering samurai roots is like unlocking a piece of their soul, a tangible link to the people who shaped Japan's history. DNA research has also helped revive interest in forgotten or marginalized communities with samurai ancestry. The Ainu people of Hokkaido, for example, have genetic ties to ancient Japanese populations that may have intermingled with early samurai groups. By studying these genetic traces, scientists are piecing together a more complete picture of Japan's warrior history, including influences from indigenous groups that were previously overlooked. But the impact of genetics goes beyond personal discovery. It's helping Japanese society reconnect with its past on a national level. Learning that modern Japanese people carry the DNA of the samurai reinforces the idea that the values of Bushido, loyalty, honor, and perseverance are not just historical concepts, but living traits encoded in the nation's collective identity. This genetic continuity is a powerful reminder that the samurai spirit endures. It explains why the imagery and philosophy of the samurai still resonate so deeply in modern Japan, influencing everything from martial arts to corporate culture. The blood of warriors who lived by the sword, who devoted their lives to duty and sacrifice, still flows through the people of Japan today, a quiet, persistent heartbeat from the past. In the end, DNA research isn't just about understanding where we come from. It's about honoring the people who came before us and carrying their stories forward. For Japan, unraveling the genetic history of the samurai is more than a scientific achievement. It's an act of remembrance, a way to ensure that the legacy of these legendary warriors never fades into obscurity.